Alright, so we know how I ran, how I was using this synth as an effects processor. Let's go into the oscillators. Now the oscillator is actually a stack macro. And the difference is stack macro is what you can use to make things tabs. Basically, if you go to panel or right click built-in module panel, you go to stack macro, and that's how you get that. Now when you first go in there, there's nothing in it, absolutely nothing. You have to build it from scratch. And the way you could do it is you get your inputs. Alright, you go to right click built-in modules, scroll all the way down in terminal. That's how you get your inputs and outputs. Okay, outputs. And basically I made like 2 inputs or 3 inputs or how many inputs I need. And I got 4 inputs and 1 output. So inside my stack macro, I put in my regular macros in there. Alright, so I got my oscillator 3. Oh, that's the playback engine one. Let's go to oscillator 1 and 2. Alright, oscillator 1, oscillator 2. These are active macros. So here's my inputs right here. I just made some inputs. And I made this my pitch, my ASDR, and this is my gate. So those are the inputs for them. And then once you go inside one of my oscillators, you see pitch, ASDR, and gate. So that way I can input into them. Same thing, PAG, PAG, inputs. Now it has the actual oscillator. And see, this is a single channel mixer or amplifier. You notice I have 1 input. Like I told you before, all I did was added another input on the other one, which gave me 2 inputs. And then I went and added a thing, and that's how I had 2 inputs. That's what I did. But with this, I just left it one input. Alright, so when we go inside, once you go inside the oscillator, you see my waveforms right here. And in previous videos, one video I showed you how I added waveforms. See, what I like to do is load up one of the macros that were already made, just because sometimes they give you a good starting point. So in this, I started off with that 3-wave oscillator. I went to right click, macro, building blocks, went to oscillator, and went to oscillator, pause, saw, and try. That's what I started off with. When I went inside, you notice this is what Native Instruments had, and I altered it into this. I just basically added more inputs, added more waveforms, and then I added this. That's the sampler that I use to make the wavetables. I have a video on how to make the wavetables as well. Actually, my first video on Reaktor was about how to make wavetables. Alright, so, but yeah, I took this and I just altered it. What I did is come over here, right click, hit properties, and down right here it says minimum a number of ports. Well, I want more than 3, so I want, let's say 8. And then added more 8 inputs. Well, I can right click, built-in modules, oscillators, and pick a waveform that I don't already have. A sine wave. Boom. I could go and drag it, connect it to one of the empty inputs. I can rename that input, because if I don't, when I go to select my waveforms, it's going to say N. So I want to rename it, so when you go to your to the front panel and you go to select your waveforms, you type in the name that you want. So it's a sine wave, I type in sine. So that way when I go select my waveform, it says sine. And if you don't, it's just gonna say N. Alright. I have a pitch and a ASDR. So I find out where is the pitch being connected to. One of these additions. So I wire it to my pitch. Or to the pitch on the sine wave. This is where the ASDR is being connected. I need to connect that there. Boom! I just added another sound wave, and I just keep going. I just keep finding, choose another waveform, and then I just keep going. All right, and that's what I did. I just kept going and kept choosing different ones, noise, all the other ones, and then I added the wavetable, which is basically a sampler that takes a small piece of a sound and repeatedly play it, because technically that's how waveforms are. If you notice, if you take this triangle, that's just a piece of a sound that just keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and that's all it is. And that's how wavetables came about. They learned that you can sample sounds and they have different waveforms in it, and you just take a piece of it and make them go back and forth, and that's how you come up with your tone. That's the whole idea behind that. I keep hitting the keys. But I added that going through my one channel mixer, and then these are outputs, a left and a right, left and right, and I'm only using one, so technically I could just cancel out the right one since I'm not using it. I can just do that, and boom. Same thing with this one. I'm just using the left. What I actually could do too, and that's why I love Reaktor so much, because you have so many options. I could actually bring that back. Let's see. I can actually bring that back. Let's rename it. Properties. Let's call it R. I could actually make this 4 inputs if I want to. Should probably give me a better sound, probably. To where I can connect all 4 into one. And same with this. I got one output. I could actually make 2 outputs and just make another. Oh, I already have an extra hole on there. I can just make these 2 have 2 outputs. But that's general how I made this oscillator. Same with this oscillator. Here's my sound. Here's my this is the multiple sample playback, and what I actually did for each sound, it's a sampler. This is a sampler, that's a sampler, that's a sampler, that's a sampler. Yeah, this is the multiple playback. I need to rename that. Playback. So basically what I did was took a macro, empty macro, and I just loaded up a bunch of samplers, and then take like the left and wired it into the switch. So every time I switch to a new sound, it would only load up, because some people like concerned about CPU usage when you're talking about loading up or having a lot of samplers. But you notice this one is the only one on. All of these are off. They're just sitting there. So it's not using as much CPU as if all of them was on at the same time. Then it would be more CPU usage.